Not only that, Mayo, it's two of the most despised Minifans together, finally. I mean, this is a union of two of the most hated people in the world. Finally, we're together for one night only. So there's going to be a lot of shit thrown out tonight. Fucking watch out if you're out there.
Tonight's topic is the YouTube channel. If you're out there thinking of starting a YouTube show, or if you already have a YouTube show, I thought I'd bring in the biggest and most vocal critic of the YouTube content to get some do's and don'ts from Mr. Menners.
Hey, Mayo, thanks for having me on your show. It's great to be with you finally. Two of the most loved and revered Minifans in the Miniverse together for one night. I think the Minifans will love this.
It gets a little, the love gets a little uncomfortable. It's like, guys, I'm just a man, you know?
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of messages I get with warm, fuzzy, feelings towards me are incredible. I really appreciate it.
People fucking hate you, Menners. People have slowly but surely come around on me, I think. I think it's the opposite for you. I feel like the more you go, the more they hate you.
Yeah, what can I say? I'm a particularly charming individual. I don't know why they hate me, just because I, didn't like an episode and I got the producer suspended. I mean, well, why not? Why wouldn't they like me?
You also talked about his wife. Don't forget that.
Okay, so, I'm glad you brought that up, and we'll get to Steve later, but I'm curious about your thoughts on this. I mean, this is Steve showing again why he's not suited to this show, why he's got no sense of humor. All I did on Menace to Midnight was say, I'd like to interview Steve's wife to find out about Steve. I never said anything about her. I didn't bring her up. I just said I'd like to interview her, and as if I'm serious, as if I'm going to go out and get Steve's wife on Menace to Midnight. And then he comes in like the next day, fucking Menace with his wife, on his lips, I'm going to kill him. I mean, fuck off. And of course I'm going to double down on it, you stupid, dumb main fuck. And so I did. I called her DEC thankfully doxed her for me. And then I could, write that she was a dumb looking woman and a moron. But if I'm serious, I mean, looking at a photo, can you tell if she's dumb? I mean, he's such a sensitive prick. I can see why, insulting someone's wife might be a bit over the line, but he opened the door. I didn't do anything real. I didn't find out where she works or find out what she does. He's just a no fun asshole.
I have made similar jokes in the past where I think in an AMA with Kirk once, I said, do you think Steve has used the phrase, quote unquote, the seed or my seed in the bedroom? Because that's where my mind went is I bet Steve has some weird sexual stuff. So that's almost down the same path as getting into stuff about his wife. So yeah, I thought your joke was generic enough, but at the same time, I also, if somebody says, here's my line in the sand, here's the shit that's off topic for me, I tend to respect it. But in your case,
Steve didn't respect that about the cafe. I mean, he make jokes about my business all the time, and I cannot criticize that because I put myself out there and I, go over the line regularly on Menace to Midnight. So I can't sort of have a double standard there. But I will say to Steve, fuck off with that shit about your wife. I never actually did anything. Again, I didn't dox his wife. I didn't find the missing audio. I didn't go searching through his old tweets and blogs. None of this is me. So all I am is the most vocal Steve hater in the Miniverse. And I stand by everything. But fuck him. I did fuck all.
So what do you see people doing wrong? Because you, as has been documented, you've got a professional background in podcasting and broadcasting, and you're polished and you're good. So what do you see amateur fans doing wrong that you would tell them to fix on the YouTube channel?
Well, let me just start by saying last Thursday and Friday night on the YouTube channel, I felt were the two best consecutive nights since the channel started. There was about 8 shows over the 2 nights. Not all, I think 6 of the 8 were good. But for last Thursday and Friday night, we saw what the YouTube channel can be. There's kind of back-to-back good programming. So I think the channel is getting somewhere and it's starting to take shape. So I see there's a lot of positives coming out of the YouTube channel. There's a lot of great shows, but I still feel that the content needs to be relevant to the KMS world. What do you think about that, May? I think, shows like Super Lemon Haze, Stonks and stuff, even Channel Zero and Drop the Mic barely qualify for the channel.
So I personally, I'm having trouble watching all of the Minahan related content. On top of that, I don't really give a shit about anything on the YouTube channel that's not related to the Kirk Minahan show. But Kirk did explain at the beginning that it's supposed to be a content playground for fans. So he gave us a blank check to go crazy with. So under those guidelines, then of course there's you can't set the criteria that it has to be KMS related. Even though I personally just don't care. Like the conspiracy theory guys, Elvin went off on me because I think he thought it was going to be low hanging mayo, and that hashtag fuck mayo would take off, and it didn't. And I was going to come back at them with how little I give a fuck about their conspiracy theories or their show. But then I was looking at their numbers, and they had relative to the other shows decent numbers, and I was like, well, maybe this is the point, that these guys are going to bring people in who aren't necessarily KMS fans, who maybe then are going to get into KMS, and maybe that's the point. So it doesn't matter that they're not KMS related. They're still
really. Do you think someone's going to watch Channel Zero and then go, "I'm going to listen to the Kirk Minahan show"?
Maybe.
Really?
Maybe. Maybe.
Well, I disagree completely. I think the opposite. That if you stumble across that channel and the first thing you click on is Super Lemon Haze or Stonks and stuff, or Channel Zero, you're not going to know what the channel's about, and that's my problem. That, as I said to Kirk, they should probably have two channels: a sort of health and lifestyle channel, and that's poor branding. They can get the Men's Cell guys to come up with something much cooler, but something that is related to the universe. So you've got the stuff, related to the show, and then you've got the, other stuff, and then you can have a whole series of programs that have very little to do with the actual KMS show, but are from people in the world. And it's the best of both worlds. They can still talk about it on the show when they want things to talk about, but it doesn't affect the channel.
But would that make that big a difference, having two different channels? Because if you're talking about people just stumbling across it on the internet, then aren't they still going to just come across all the same content anyway?
Yeah, but if they go onto the KMS show channel and they click on one of these shows and that's the first thing they see, are they going to go down and see the Hot Minna Ladies or Nichols or OG or the Men's Cell? They might just go, I'm not into this conspiracy. I mean, they might think the whole channel is a conspiracy channel if they click on Channel Zero. They might think the whole channel's about weed if they click on Super Lemon Haze. I mean, it's just poor branding for me.
Well, I'm with you.
But I will say, Andy, those shows by themselves, of course, Super Lemon Haze, taken out of that, are quite good. So Channel Zero is a good show. I enjoyed listening to them with Kirk. They're good guys. I like Elvin.
Elvin's good.
So there's a place for it. I'm certainly not denigrating their work, except for Super Lemon Haze and Eric in particular.
I made a little bit of list of tips I would give people considering a YouTube show. And I thought that having a strong theme for the content seems to help, because I think that your show has a concrete premise. It's matters taking calls and, getting told fuck you and die by Steve from Providence, which is a great moment.
And it's a bit of a week in review. I try to give my thoughts on what's been going on in the world. Use
maybe 36 more week in review shows on the KMS YouTube. I don't think we have quite enough of that yet. And then I think I would.
Well, the rundown's the best, isn't it? Way better than DEC's now.
They're totally. They're not. It's not even apples and apples. It's apples and oranges, because DEC's, there's no response to it. It's him playing just clips of the show, which I like, but the rundown has fans responding and giving opinions. So they're totally different. I never thought that was quite a fair comparison. And if I had to pick, I probably would pick the rundown over DEC's, but that's because I listen to every second of the show, so I don't necessarily need that weekend recap.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the weekend review from DEC, because it comes out Sunday, Monday here, and there's no show till Tuesday here, so it kind of fills a little gap, just gets you in the KMS mindset. Yeah,
that's what it does for me too. The other thing I would tell people is to just bring some fucking energy to it. I find that that's sometimes the biggest thing lacking on the YouTube channel. Is if you listen to Kirk, he could be talking about seemingly mundane or silly shit that doesn't matter, yet he somehow always has a sense of urgency to it. And sometimes I'll turn on the YouTube channel and it's just, a really almost monotone delivery.
Give me some examples of who were doing this.
I think Latino Kirk does it. But I think he's gotten better. And we can talk a little bit more about Latino Kirk.
We've both had our run-ins with LK, but go on.
The Poppy's Kitchen guys, I watched, it was either their second or third episode, and it was Poppy, Adam, Sheldon.
That's actually a mild sedative, that show. It's been prescribed as a mild sedative. If you're struggling to sleep, you put Poppy's Kitchen on, and you're guaranteed to be out like a light within 20 minutes.
But they were talking KMS, which I'll listen to almost anybody talk KMS. But in their case, they were so low energy that I didn't want to listen to it. If they just had a little more pep in their step, I probably would have stuck around for it. So then that gets into co-host dynamics. I would tell people to consider too, because those guys I just listed all seem to be very similar. I think they're all probably low key guys that want to get along and have discussions, like calm discussions of stuff where that's not necessarily the most dynamic thing. So similar to, like, I always thought MHB and DEC were a good mix because MHB is a maniac and DEC is kind of the straight man in it. So I would tell people to consider that too. Think about who you're pairing up with when you do these things.
Yeah, and do something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Find what part of the KMS world really gets you going, and you can bring that energy naturally because you can't fake it. It's got to be something you're passionate about, and you get found out really quickly. I mean, we saw DJK, that fucking absolute drip loser, nobody fuckhead on Mike and the Minifans. I mean, he had nothing. There's no substance to him. He's a fucking loser, and he's not passionate about the world. All he wants is a bit of attention because he's been sacked from the radio, and he's seen the sort of KMS as a way in. And I want to talk about that later on. We'll get to that in a sec. But yeah, so you got to be passionate. You'll be found out if you're not. And just be mindful as well that there's quite a big time commitment in doing a weekly show. Yeah. I mean, you do need to prepare something. The only person that could get on the YouTube channel and talk with no preparation is Kirk. He's the only one who's talented enough to do it.
Well, Mike does it.
Yeah, but he's no good at it. And then he sits there at the end of Mike and the Minifans going, anything else, guys? Anything else? Anyone got anything?
Have you watched
anything else, Mayo? I mean, think of a topic you want to talk about and bring it up.
Have you watched his 2 new shows? Because to be fair, I have not seen his other shows, and I've been wondering with Drop the Mic, does it seem as though there's more legwork going into that than there is Mike and the Minifans? Or is it just another kind of let's go and riff?
I don't love Drop the Mic, but it's not for me. I'm glad Mike's doing it because he's passionate about comedy. And actually, when I didn't listen to the last one, but the first couple, his passion for comedy does come out in the show. His knowledge, he's able to list all the podcasts and give recommendations and that kind of thing. So I don't mind that show. Again, that doesn't have to be for everybody, and it might be something that will be better on a sort of second network. Must see, though, that the TV show that he started with John and Red, I quite like that concept because I think sort of TV shows do sort of come into the KMS discussions quite often. So I think having a show about, TV shows will help eventually drive those discussions.
I think you could do a show where you watch, Kirk brings up a movie and then you have a show where everybody on it just watches that movie and goes over it. Or you could do the Kirk book club.
Yeah, but Kirk has terrible taste in movies, so we don't want him deciding. We don't really want him or Steve deciding, or Mike. And I've got another thing as well. I think that some people just have to be aware that they're actually just not a broadcaster. Like, you can try it, you can give it a go, but not everybody will be a great broadcaster. And, we've seen a few already that aren't great broadcasters already on the chat. I've got a list here: DJK, Mincel Phil, Fez, Kirk Min Burner, Intern Will, Eric from Super Lemon Haze, Steve Robinson, all people that probably aren't natural broadcasters.
I thought Not Kirk Min's Burner was pretty. I thought he was good on the rundown.
No, I thought he was terrible.
Oh,
just
really?
A drip.
I thought he seemed like a natural. Except my nickel's worth of free advice to him is murder that dog before the next show.
Yeah, I mean, murder him and suicide. He's a double murder suicide. I mean, the guy's useless.
Oh, I disagree. I thought he was good. I actually I don't know if I told him, but I told somebody. I said he should do more.
Yeah, I think he should do less. Yeah, I hope coronavirus gets him.
Fez as well. I thought Fez was okay.
Well, Fez is okay. He's just can't talk properly, and he's terrible on air. I mean, he's just terrible.
You did not list Latino Kirk, and I'm not saying you should have, but if we were having this conversation, let's say 6 weeks or 8 weeks ago, would you have listed Latino Kirk when you were really shitting on him?
I would have, but since he's started his new show El Fuego, where he just eats very spicy food and says very little, I think that's actually the best use of his talents. Kind of like I don't even know. What's that shit? Where they used to go and just do stupid shit to themselves. That very, yeah, he could just do a show like that.
It's kind of, yeah. He is.
I think that would suit him.
So the reason I asked about Latino Kirk is because my other advice to people who want to do a YouTube show is you'll get better with time, and you're going to have people like Menners destroy you perhaps. And if you got to have a thick skin, and don't necessarily, you might have Menners or somebody else come out and say, you're not meant to do this, you're bad at it. But I think Latino Kirk is gotten better. And like you said, he kind of has found a bit of a groove with that show. I thought he was better on the rundown too. Again, because I think the format of that show with a set agenda and quick hits on the topics is conducive to a dynamic presentation.
Well, I've got something to run by you, and it's something I'm curious whether you agree with, but I've noticed this, I guess it's a phenomenon where I think people think that being on the KMS YouTube channel is like a way into Barstool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I feel like some people think that, they might eventually be able to get a job with Barstool or get a job with Kirk. And, this whole thing's sort of an audition process, and Eric is watching. And, I do feel that some people think that, they're getting an in with Barstool, and that's why people like, say, DJK and the Mincel guys and, these people are doing their shows to try and sort of push their own sort of brand.
I don't know. I don't agree with that. I don't disagree with you that maybe people look at it that way. If people look at it that way, I think they're wrong. The only person that maybe has come close is John from Scranton, because the show has said that he's been doing some stuff behind the scenes for them. So, but again, I mean, I don't know if it would lead to anything, but he seems like, of all people, that maybe, and it's because he's hustling, he maybe could leverage it into some type of opportunity, but he would be the exception to the rule in that case.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an audition. I know people were saying that's why Kirk was going on all the shows, because he wanted to like feel people out. I do not think that was the case.
I mean, I'm surprised. I get messages from people saying, "Oh, why don't you start an Aussie Barstool show, or why don't you, why don't you try and work with Kirk?" And I'm like, I've never started any of these shows to do any of that. It's just a bit of fun. It's almost like an escape, a bit of a wild ride.
Yeah.
And I never saw it as anything else. So I'm curious that I think people actually do want. I mean, they mentioned it in today's show that fucking bitch that lives in Maine is always messaging in asking to be Kirk's co-host. I think there is that kind of. People feel that there's an opening, that Mike hasn't secured the second chair, and Kirk could, just pull someone from the YouTube to be his co-host.
Who do you think on the YouTube he could pull that maybe could do it?
Nobody. Absolutely no one.
I could do it.
No, you can do it.
Give me $100,000 in a 1-year contract, and I would go try.
Okay, well, there you go. I asked for $500,000.
I think I could do it. I could definitely do it.
Yeah, Kirk said last week about me, he said, Menace had his chance to take me on when he interviewed me. And I was like, why? What do I want to take him on about? I've said how much I love the guy,
So that's actually on my list of miscellaneous shit to bring up with you. So let's get into that. Kirk on the YouTube tour was very nice to everybody. And he was acerbic and sarcastic. Like, he called me a fucking idiot, and but he didn't come in and eviscerate me like he could have if he really hated me and wanted to. So, but then he gave us shit for not, going at him, when I kind of felt like, well, you didn't really come at us either. I thought the way everybody went about it was good. But then he has been mocking people for not stepping up. He actually, at one point, I don't remember what it was, he asked why I didn't bring something up when I had him on the show, and it was something that literally hadn't occurred yet at the time that we recorded the show. So I don't know. I feel like Kirk is kind of, I don't know, softening a bit.
I don't think he's softening, but I think that there's an element in the YouTube tour that Kirk wasn't sure what was going to be thrown at him and who would be able to handle, Kirk ranting at them. So I think he was trying to be kind. I mean, he's a professional broadcaster, and most of the people on the YouTube channel aren't. So I feel he was quite, gentle on purpose. But I mean, I said it like, you and I kind of did our interviews the way we wanted, and we kind of disarmed him. I mean, we didn't see the normal Kirk because we were so able to sort of, scrape the surface below that normal Kirk and get some different stuff out of him.
I thought we both got some good stuff out of him. I mean, I'd never heard him say that he hates the Red Sox more than Bob Murchison. I don't know if I maybe perhaps missed it in the past, but I thought that was a pretty big reveal. And then he said something to you, and he said something to me that he said, I asked him if he really wants recognition for how unique and great the podcast is, and he said I actually crave it. He craves that recognition. And then he said to you that his father never really quite got what he was doing on the radio and kind of just wished he could conform and be kind of like Jerry Callahan and just do the reads and don't make fun of the Red Sox. And as Kirk himself always says, it always comes back to your parents. And in his case, in therapy, always comes back to his father. So that right there, I felt like, in a way, summed up to me, like that's his core drive. That's what drives everything he does, I think, is trying to, prove that he's the best at this, because on some level his dad didn't or couldn't recognize how great what he's doing is.
I think you're overthinking that. Stuff. Yeah, I think you're overthinking the psychoanalysis. I'm sure it's there. I mean, everybody is affected by their relationships with their parents, but I think it more plays into what happened at EEI. So he talks about wanting recognition for the podcast.
Compound that with the fuckheads at EEI not recognizing his greatness, coupled with the fact that his father, the biggest figure in his life, also wasn't recognizing it.
Are you a psychologist outside of?
I just think about
but I don't know if you remember, but when Kirk was on the radio doing monster ratings, I think he felt untouchable. I mean, he used to say it, you can sack me if you want, you're going to lose 20 ratings. And I think a lot of him, and quite rightly so, I'm sure Jerry and the rest thought it too, that they were untouchable. They were making so much money for Entercom. He could do whatever and he would be able to keep going because he was so valuable. And he was bringing in so much money. But then in the end, Kirk lost. He's 0-3. He lost to the Boston Globe. He lost to the Boston Red Sox. And he lost to Bob Murchison. So Kirk is out of the monster job that he had. Now he's landed in a fantastic spot and he's rebounded. But I think there is a bit of that kind of, losing the great job, realizing he was touchable. And, I think there is a bit of that driving him now. He's 0-3 against his biggest enemies, and I think that does drive him.
I agree. It drives him. I think I would say in those cases he lost battles, but not the war. I think he's winning the war because ultimately I think Bob Murchison, I know Kirk, would have rather the guy never landed in his life, but in a way, him and the Sox and the Globe did him a favor by forcing the severance of ties with EEI and Entercom, because that was inevitable.
Yeah, but you can say that now, Mayo, but go back to the time. No. Go back to the time. There's no way Kirk and Jerry wanted their show ripped apart. I mean, Kirk can, do all his revisionist history now saying, he wasn't happy there. And, this is the best thing. You can see Jerry's podcast and my podcast. It's so different. Kirk was in on a good thing. He knew it. He was enjoying it. At the time, it was very, very, very painful for him to have the show ripped out from under him. There is no doubt about that.
I'm not saying it wasn't painful. Even as a listener, I at the time didn't want K&C to break up. I wanted EEI to bring Kirk back. And it was painful as a fan to have him ripped away like that, so unceremoniously. But in retrospect, it's, I think it has turned out to be a good thing, if not the best thing that could have happened to him in terms of his career path.
I agree that, going to Barstool and starting a podcast is a great move for him. And you look at Entercom now, they're just hemorrhaging money. So he'd probably be out of a job anyway. But I agree.
Speaking of Kirk's infamously dead parents, let's get into some dead dad stuff.
Yeah, okay.
So we could do this pretty quickly because I know everybody's intentions were good. But I gotta say, and I hope I'm not being a dick by getting into this, but what was with fucking Minifans changing their Twitter avatars to pictures of Kirk's dad yesterday on the anniversary of his death?
What a bunch of sycophants.
Really weird, and just like the kind of shit that we dump on other people for doing.
Yeah, I found it particularly weird because Kirk on the show they recorded on Sunday night said, "I don't want messages from people wishing me, well or whatever."
Okay.
He said, I don't need messages, So for everybody to then change their photo to Peter Minahan, I thought was a bit strange. Nothing surprised me because after what happened with the Cullen episode with the sycophants that just, obviously cannot handle a second of dissension. This was in their wheelhouse to suck up to Kirk as much as they can. But I thought it was a bit creepy. I actually, I was like, who's this fucking guy on everybody's avatar? And then I twigged who it was. But yeah, it was a bit creepy. Like my dad's been dead for a while. I wouldn't like it if, friends of mine just put my dad's avatar as a tribute to him one day. I'd find it a bit creepy.
No, actually, I'd like to go on record. My dad's alive. He's 80 and asthmatic, and he lives in a city with a lot of COVID-19. So, when he inevitably succumbs to coronavirus, MHB, I'm sure, has lots of photos of my dad in his doxing file that he has ready to go on me. Please, guys, do it. I know your hearts are in the right place. Don't put my dead dad on your Twitter avatars, okay? And no memes of him either. My thing with it was I just thought, imagine if Jared Carabas did that on the anniversary of David Ortiz's dad's death. Wouldn't we all destroy him for it?
Yeah. But these are the same people that, a couple of people doesn't like one episode of a podcast and it's like we're fucking treacherous scum. I mean, the Minifans are becoming everything they despise now. They're becoming sycophants and this mob mentality where no one actually thinks for themselves anymore and they just go along with what Kirk says daily. And it's a real disturbing phenomenon that everything Kirk rails for, free speech, independent thought, drive discussion, push the boundaries. His fans now are going the other way. They're turtling and they're becoming a bunch of pissants. But the Cullen show is a good example. The Cullen show is a better example. All right, I'm telling you, Mayo, I actually didn't like it. Now, Kirk says,
I believe you.
Kirk's saying I did this to be this fake contrarian. I know you didn't like the Hammer show, but when have I been the person that rails against the content? I'm not that person. People accuse me of giving Kirk a blowjob on my interview. I'm not someone that tries to criticize Kirk. The fact is, I don't like audio drama, so I don't listen to any podcasts where they're just telling stories anyway. I don't like comedy shows normally, and by comedians, and this one wasn't funny anyway, so it wasn't a comedy show. And I find the story boring. I didn't think the jokes landed. I think 2 jokes landed for me. One that I remember was where Harry said, "I've got to sleep over with Stephen Murphy." I found that hilarious, but I just didn't like it. No big deal. It was just it was a miss for me. And if people are trying to tell me all the jokes landed, they're fucking lying. They are fucking lying. There's no way a lot of those jokes landed.
To you, and I said to somebody, "Do you really think Menners was laughing, rolling around on the floor, dying with laughter, listening to Cullen, and then tweeted out that it sucked because he wants the attention?" Well, that's absurd.
I wasn't.
No problem believing you didn't like something that the creator of that thing acknowledged ahead of time some people definitely would not like. But then when somebody doesn't like it, people go fucking nuts about it.
Yeah. I also find the assertion that I didn't like it just because I wasn't asked to do a voice quite off the mark, because obviously I wasn't going to get asked to do a voice. I'm very vocal anti-Cullen content, so I don't think they would ask me to do a voice. Steve hates me. I mean, he hates me on and off the air. This is not a fake thing anymore. I mean, trying to get peace with him was awful. So he hates me. He's not going to reach out to me. And, you know, in the past when I've been asked to do a couple of things, I've forgotten to do them for the show or for the songs and stuff. So, you know, I'm not upset that I wasn't asked. I just didn't like it. I mean, it's not some sort of cry for help because I was left out of recording a line by myself at home and having that cut into an average podcast.
I would, for the record, I would have been upset had I not been asked.
Well, that's fair enough.
I definitely would have been very jealous.
Yeah.
But I was asked and I knocked it out of the park.
Yes, I like your voice. You sound, for an Aussie, you sound like a typical American. Like you sound like the classic American TV voice.
Can you do an American accent? Try it.
Cool, man. Cool, man.
Say more than that.
Well, let's just talk and maybe I'll try and bring it in later. I can't do it off.
Talk about Burger King. American.
Well, I don't want Burger King. I can't do it.
That sounded better.
Burger King. When I was a kid, I did ads for Silverhawks toys in Canada, and I had to do an American accent. When I was a young kid.
I don't remember who my nickelhead was. Oh, it was going to be everybody with the Peter Minahan avatar. I'm trying to think of who else pissed me off. In general, stop calling Minifans legends. God, that fucking drives me crazy.
Why?
I don't know. I really don't know why, because with DEC, I see it for DEC all the time. And I would say, like, when they talked today, they talked about the Mount Rushmore of Minifans. And when they said, oh, MHB or DEC, I immediately, I would have argued strongly for DEC over MHB. So it's not that I don't think the guy's worthy of recognition. I guess it's something to do with when newer fans call people legends, it just, to me, reinforces that divide between like the OG group and the new people.
I think you're just sensitive that you're not being called a legend, or I think you're sensitive you're not in the Minifan private thread.
No, I don't want.
It seems to be a recurring theme with you. You feel left out. I mean, I don't care who they call legends, as long as people aren't messaging me telling me to die, which it's a nice change.
Okay. I was ostracized when the show started. I was ostracized from the group of fans, even though I felt like I'd had some influence on Twitter and stuff like that. And that bothered me. So now that I've gotten, I'm involved in the YouTube, they make fun of me on the show. Everything I've gotten, because I've always said, of course I want to get closer to the shows and the guys on the show, because I fucking love it. And they're giving you the chance to do it. So why wouldn't you try to do it?
Do what?
To get close to the show. Like people would criticize me they'd be like, oh, all you want to do is get closer to the show. And it's like, yes, of course I want to get close to the show that I love. And then it winds up, I
was the opposite.
It leads to getting to interview Kirk Minahan, which is fucking awesome. So my point is, I made all that shit happen for myself because I was ostracized from that group. I had to actually work to make it happen.
I was nervous about doing anything on the KMS world because I wanted to keep some distance between myself and the show I love so much. When I started going on Mike and the Minifans last year, I was sort of thought, I'm not sure about whether I should do this. Did you have any nerves about that? Because, the show's an escape for me. And, it's, great fun, but obviously when you throw yourself into it, it becomes, a bit of a wild ride.
I once a week say I'm going to delete my Twitter account and not do YouTube shows and not do anything but listen to the show anymore. So I totally understand what you're saying about whether getting close to it affects your relationship with the show as just a fan. I think it does.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's such an escape because it's based in Boston, a long way from home. It's it's like going to another universe, for me. So yeah, putting yourself out there does change that kind of dynamic.
And some of it too is that again, telling people what to get ready for if you're going to have a YouTube show. A lot of it is that you do end up catching shit from people and getting into these, disagreements that can turn into little battles online, which, as much as I know Kirk is going to hate us talking about that like it's a serious thing, it is time consuming and energy consuming. And sometimes you do get actually annoyed or pissed off with people. And eventually I can understand why, somebody might say, all right, I'm fucking stepping away from this for a while.
Yeah, and I think this is a nice segue into why I decided to end the campaign against Steve Robinson.
Yes, I have a banner for that.
Steve defeats Manners. That's wrong. I'm
Okay.
not defeated.
Why is
That's
that wrong?
fake news. Fake news. All right, so Steve has not defeated me. I hate this title, but I'll just go into it. So when Kirk was talking about how Steve's the best producer he's worked with, and on his tour, he just was waxing lyrical about this fuckhead from Maine.
I set him up for that.
Yeah, so I started to realize after that essentially, if I'm working against Steve, unfortunately, at the moment, I'm also working against Kirk. That's the sort of natural order of things. I mean, for example, say tomorrow I would have been given something that would mean Steve would have to be fired. Say he deleted more and more audio and has never admitted to it, right? And Kirk would just be like, "You're fucking fired. I can't do this." All of a sudden, Kirk's got no producer. He's probably going to have to bring someone like Carano in, and basically you're fucking up everything Kirk's built in the last year. If I were to, get Steve fired, so I don't want to work against Kirk anymore at all. So I've got to, by definition, then I've got to support Steve. Not that I still hate him. I don't like him. But I'm closing the file. The case is closed. I don't want any more DMs. Andy, I get messages every day about Steve, whether it's lies, old posts, just material after material about Steve. And I'm chucking it all out, destroying the file. I'm not going to take any more messages. I'm just going to let Steve destroy himself eventually, I guess.
Why didn't that dawn on you earlier? I mean, when you first got Steve suspended and you contributed to it, I know a few other people did too, but my point is, before you were working against Steve and he got suspended, he could have been fired. At that time, it would have been just as disruptive as it would have been now. So how come you didn't think of it that way earlier? I
guess really hearing Kirk elaborate it on his relationship with Steve, during these YouTube interviews, I sort of, Kirk's off the shtick on those interviews, and we got a bit of honesty, and not that he's not honest, but there was no it was a serious conversation. So, their professional relationship is quite strong at the moment, Kirk and Steve, and I'll stand by this. I think that is a symptom of Kirk's mental disposition, that whoever he works with is very intense with. I mean, May, you will remember he said the same things about Ken and Curtis, that they were the best producers he's ever worked with, and how could you get a better producer? So I don't see it necessarily as being fact, but I do see that this is the way Kirk feels. Then I can't work against his producer.
Real quick on Ken Laird, I hope Kirk said today he texts Ken on the anniversary of his dad's death. I really hope that's not true. Ken was the best producer and remains the best producer in terms of the audio cuts. Ken is on a different planet than Steve Robinson in that regard. So in that sense, I can understand Kirk having said that Ken was the best, because the audio drops on KNC were like a permanent third member of the show. It was, I love that aspect.
Ken's talent was the timing with the drops. Yeah, the timing was amazing.
He had him ready, and sometimes it was like it would feel like a split second that Kirk would say something, and within the context of what was said, a split second later, Ken would have the drop. I used to wonder if Ken was somehow adding them using the delay in the broadcast. But anyway, Steve is different from Ken in the sense that, what I asked Kirk about was to explain how what Steve does is different than what most producers in their business do. And it's things like Madawaska and the Wilbur and the, Steve is.
But that's Kirk, who's just worked in radio. I mean, that's not amazing. That's what producers do. They get shit done.
Do you know of other producers that?
Yeah, lots of podcast producers do all that shit.
Planning and.
Yeah, monetizing podcasts is all about merchandise, live shows. I mean, every good podcast producer is doing that. I mean, it's not some amazing thing. I agree. It sounds like from the outside, Steve is a very hard worker. If Kirk messages him at 9 at night with something, he gets back to him. So I'm not disputing that. But what I'm saying is that's not abnormal. This is just a symptom of Kirk's radio experience. This is the first podcast he's done outside of Entercom. I mean, this is normal podcasting stuff.
The other side of that coin, Menners, is what Kirk had to say about Mike on the YouTube tour. Now, I saw my friend Joe Hennessy, who regularly shits on me, but somehow I love that guy. He quoted Mike the other day saying I'm a fake Twitter tough guy or something. I didn't hear Mike say it. I don't know the context, but all I would say is Kirk went on the YouTube show, and every opportunity he had was forthright and open about his assessment of Mike's performance in a way that he had never been before. And Mike has yet to ask him about it on the show. And Mike told me on Mike and the Minifans that, oh, well, that's what we do. We air our grievances on the show. No, you don't. You don't, Mike. You do not bring those things up. He made one, passive aggressive reference to your interview on the show with Kirk and his brothers, where he said, maybe if you'd been a better communicator, I'd be doing better.
Yeah, he said, I got more out of that interview than I have in the months together.
Which is what I've been saying the whole fucking time, but somehow I'm an asshole for saying it. So all I want, the last thing I'll say, because I'm done trying to critique Mike or whatever. The last thing I'll say is all I want is for Mike to turn to Kirk on the show and say, Kirk, how am I doing so far? If you had to rehire me tomorrow for another 2 years, would you? Why or why not? I just want them to have the fucking discussion. The whole show is built on pulling the curtain back, and I don't know why. I don't know why. This is one topic that Kirk will not pull the curtain back on the show with Mike in the room. He did it with all of us on YouTube.
It's because Mike won't push it. But I think
Kirk wants him to.
But Kirk likes Mike, and Kirk wants to be the alpha male, but he also wants more from Mike. He wants Mike to start to challenge him a little bit, and start to push Kirk a little bit. As I said, if I was in the room with Kirk doing a show every day, there were some days I would come in and I would probably tell Kirk to fuck off for some reason. Kirk can be very annoying.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand how you could work with Kirk, who is an extreme guy, and not occasionally get pissed off at him. And why not bring that on air?
And Mike should come in passionate about stuff, and it doesn't have to be political stuff. It could be anything, but try and drive some of the show. He's too passive. And as you say, those interviews on YouTube are a great little sort of points for Mike to start off. He can even be more specific. Listen to something Kirk said about him on my interview and take that to Kirk on the show. You said you want to see this. Can you please tell me how I could do that? And I would also question Kirk if I was Mike. Kirk doesn't want to be a mentor, doesn't want to give any support to Mike. If I was Mike, I would say, no, I want your support. You're my fucking boss. You brought me into this show. I want you to give me some little bits of mentoring, whether you like it or not. I think Kirk would do it. You got to fucking take the initiative.
That's why I use the example of go to fucking Papa Gino's once a month. You know what I mean? And Mike could try to initiate that, and everybody laughs at that. Or they say that I'm trying to suggest Mike go to business school. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, Mike, try to find some time that this guy can carve out to just talk shop with you.
Even on the show, fucking
take you under his arm and fucking, nurse you at his teat. Just fucking talk shop with you, because he's Kirk Minahan. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to learn from this guy, but Kirk is.
Or he finds somebody else, or Mike finds somebody outside. And I've actually said to Mike, for example, Mike and the Minifans, he needs somebody to help him produce the show, because he makes every second week he makes a bad production decision. So, for example, show before last, he started with him and Justin doing a 10-minute monologue, and then he brought in a really good panel. And it was actually a really good show. But most people are going to watch him and Justin fucking yapping on, and after 5 minutes, they'll turn it off. So, if you're thinking, you go, okay, I'll start with the great panel, and I'll say, at the end of this, I'm going to talk to, and end it with you chatting to Justin. All of a sudden, you got a much better show. People turn on, bang, straight into, 3 or 4 people having a good discussion. And then for the real Mike and the Minifan watchers, they'll watch at the end where he yabbers on to Justin for 10 minutes. But he just continually makes these poor decisions.
Mike seems to have this perception that I don't like him. He has said before that every time he invites me on, he feels like it's getting sent to the principal's office. I fucking love Mike. If it was up to me to extend Mike 2 more years on the show, I would vote yes. I don't want Mike to go anywhere. So I just want to be clear about that. I like Mike. My concern is Mike is going to be too passive and not get renewed because of that. Because I think Kirk wants Mike to seize the opportunity, and I think he was kind of baiting him on YouTube. I think Kirk was saying, let me see what Mike does if I go out there and say this stuff, and whether he's going to actually, this will be the kick in the ass that gets him to bring it up or not.
I mean, there was a thing that started today's podcast that right at the beginning, Kirk started by saying basically he walked in the room and Mike was talking to Steve, and as soon as Kirk walked in, Mike shut up.
Yes.
Now, that to me typifies the character of Michael Geary.
I thought the same thing.
If Kirk walked into the room and I was talking to my producer, I wouldn't shut up because, oh, look, someone who used to be on the radio walked in the room. I mean, give me a fucking break. I mean, Kirk is the greatest broadcaster in history. He's just another person. He's a moody prick. He's come from radio. He's doing a podcast. Big deal. It's not fucking, some superstar. You don't have to shut up. And I don't know. I just found the whole thing quite indicative of why Mike is where he is.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. It was one of those moments that kind of encapsulates a lot of different things, and it kind of summed up the Mike Kirk dynamic in a way. But then you also in that moment had Steve saying that he didn't want Mike to shut up. So maybe I don't know. Maybe Steve can have more of an influence on him. So Steve defeats Menners. You got anything else?
Fake news.
You got anything else you want to say on that?
It's a ceasefire. It's a ceasefire. I do not like Steve at all.
I like Steve.
Why? He's a liar. He's fake news. There's no substance there. He is put himself together for this show, and it will fall apart just as quickly.
I like Steve because let me think about why I like Steve. I like Steve because I like big swinging dick Steve. Like when people are like, Steve's mean to the callers.
I like that. That's my favorite Steve too.
That's Steve. I love that.
I agree.
And I've done this where Steve has, maybe misrepresented a DM or something, and I've been like, oh, what a dick he was. And then I think about it, I'm like, you know how much shit Steve has taken from the Minifans? And then we all get our panties in a bunch when he gives some of it back. And that's when I realized, like, you know what? Actually, I'm good. I'm glad. I like Steve fighting back.
No, I don't like him at all.
But I think it's symptomatic of coming from the world of politics, because Steve's lies are always strategic, and I think he comes from a world where that is commonplace. Bending the truth, stretching the truth, twisting it, whatever you want to call it. That's just, I think, the way he's wired to think about things.
But he's a cunt. He's just a cunt. I hate dealing with him. But as I said, the file's closed. So I'm saying, don't send me anything else. Don't want lies. I don't want old posts. I don't want anything from Steve's past. I don't want photos of his wife. It's all in the bin, in the deleted bin. The file's closed. I will, as I said, not work against Steve. I'll just do it for the sake of Kirk. As I said, I don't like Steve. Even trying to we're personally text messaging, trying to negotiate this peace accord. I tried to do it online. He doesn't want to go on air with me because he hates me. He doesn't want to do any content with me ever. But that's the peace is in the kingdom.
Do you think he should like you? I mean,
no, I don't think he should have liked me, but I think he's a fucking pussy for not doing this YouTube. Like, me and Steve could have done a 20-minute YouTube chat about this that I think would have done well for the channel. And, he pussied out because he's a cunt, and he does it because I make a couple of, off-color remarks about his wife. Like, if someone said my wife's an idiot and she looks like a moron on Discord, I wouldn't fucking run around like a hissy fit. Like if I go on and found out what job she does and put something about, say she's a teacher, say I put, she's a dumb teacher and, she's fucking all the students or something. That's personal. It's, going into her real life, making a kind of general comment. I mean, it's childish. Maybe it's off color. Maybe it's not clever. But it got the result. It got the response. I mean, it got him arced up. And I was really pissed off when he said everyone should go on Uber Eats and order stuff from my restaurant, until I realized everyone would have to pay. And then I was kind of like, well, okay, well, we need the money. So
yeah,
I just felt sorry for the Uber Eats drivers that were driving around like looking for streets in Boston, in Sydney.
Well, did they get to eat the food?
Probably.
Well, so that works out for everybody.
Yeah.
But at the time, before they revealed that it actually wouldn't screw you over, I was like, ooh, that's...
Yeah, I was pissed. Like, I put a tweet out saying I was going to, at one point I was saying, just release everything I've been saying about Steve on Twitter. And then I deleted that tweet, which Steve has pointed out on the show many times, because it was an empty threat. I was actually never going to release everything. I was just angry. And I'm the type of person that I like to stick to my word. So, as I said, it was an empty threat. I'm not that kind of guy that's into cancelling people or bringing up old stuff from people's past. I think that's a scumbag move, which is another reason I've closed the file, because I'm sick of getting that shit about Steve. But yeah, it did drive me nuts. But I guess, as I said, I cannot really cry too much, because I went at Steve hard. I said a lot of hurtful things to him, and I just have to take it on the chin.
Have you been sent anything that you think would get Steve fired, were you to reveal it?
Probably not. Probably not. I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask Kirk really about what his lines are and who he wants to work with, and where he. Oh, yeah, no, not really. I mean, could make it uncomfortable for him. As I said, kind of the best way to get Steve fired would be him fucking with Kirk again. It has to be deleting audio or, keeping information away from Kirk or something like that. But yeah, as I'm not interested anymore. Steve will be out of there. So I was convinced as soon as the Wilbur was gone, he was going to quit. So now that the Wilbur's been put back, I still think post-coronavirus, he'll move on. Because he's not for the world. He's got no sense of humor. I mean, the fact that he took that wife stuff so seriously. I mean, my joke was that him and his wife play Eleanor and FDR sex games. I mean, that's funny.
Eleanor and FDR did not have sex, though.
And they're Democrats, aren't they? I don't know.
Well,
wasn't he?
No, he was hooking up with, I believe it was his cousin. And I think historically looking back, they think that Eleanor may have been gay or bisexual. So I don't think there was a lot of, I think you should revise your. So
it really fits Stephen's wife story then.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not going there, Manners. You're going to get me in trouble. Well, Manners, not to pull a mic, but you got anything else?
Not really. I listened to you. What?
We've hit all the bullet points. Oh
yeah, I listened to you and DC and R.A. Minahan and
how was that?
Chris from Wakefield from a few weeks ago, when they were just sort of attacking you for being a fake contrarian. Yeah. And I guess it sort of twigged to me that there are these sort of fucking, and it happened with the Cullen show, they're just these assholes that are just going to go along with whatever direction Kirk gives them. And Kirk is next level at psychological warfare. So, when he's going, it's going to be a real battle. And he gets his minions to, wage war on people. And you've been the recipient. I've been the recipient. And I just wonder, when everyone's coming out after you, because of what, when Kirk says Mayo's the worst Minifan, how do you feel?
Oh, I actually feel pretty good about it. I didn't before. There was a stretch there. It all changed with the YouTube show, and I'm sure Kirk will tell me how wrong I am about this. But there was a stretch there where I really was like, I wonder if Kirk actually hates me, and I felt kind of bad about that, especially when he would say things like, "Yeah, I don't think he likes the show," or "He's a dill," or a Kelleher. I think he did call me a clout chaser once. That stuff bothered me because I know it's not true. And so then I said, well, what am I doing that's feeding that perception? So coming into the YouTube show, I honestly thought maybe he's going to come in here and like make an example of me and just fucking destroy me, which he could have. But he was cool with it to the point where it made me feel like the part of me that always felt like, okay, it's a perhaps adversarial type of dynamic, but it's all in fun, and he knows I like the show, and I think he likes you and me. And he did call us essential. So there was a while there where I was kind of bothered by it. Now when they say stuff about me, I mean, they've been going off about how ugly I am, and I just sit there and laugh now. And I used to laugh.
I've got some news for you, Mayo. The Minna ladies are big fans of yours. They were asked who are some of their sexiest Minna fans, and surprisingly, they're not into short, fat, 3 foot tall Aussies. They're more into the Mayos of this world.
So Tara, who I love on that show, I appreciated. I think she just came right out and said I was handsome or something. But then the response from the other two, I think Lauren Lynn said, yeah, he's not the ugliest guy on the YouTube, which is kind of a backhanded compliment. But no, when Kirk goes off about how ugly I am, or that I'm the product of incest because my mother had sex with her brothers.
True story.
It's actually like heartwarming.
That
to me.
the issue that you and I face is that if we hit a nerve in Kirk, we've got to expect he's going to come back hard at us. I mean, I can't say, him loving Steve is a product of his mental illness and not expect him to come back at me with something. It's just, the way it is in the world.
So that was the episode with Menners. I'm recording this at the end because I was just thinking about a couple things that I wanted to circle back to, and one thing that I wanted to bring up that I forgot to bring up with Menners. So I'm going to do it now. The first one is I said that Kirk is softening, and that I might have even said the show is softening. Not meant as a critical take. Here's what I mean by that. Some of Kirk's most memorable moments were absolute blow-ups where he went fire and brimstone at EEI. Okay, he got suspended for how badly he flipped out about the Red Sox and John Henry and Linda Pizzuti. Okay, I think he once said he practically blacked out with rage during that segment. So I think now I wonder if he's got professional success and appreciation from an audience and, most importantly, his employer that he didn't have at Entercom and he didn't have at EEI. And if the absence of those factors is leading to fewer blow-ups from Kirk when in the past you may have expected one. And I brought this up on the YouTube show with Kirk, and this is not meant to denigrate TJ Hubbard in any way, but this is a good example of it, where I said to Kirk, when people pointed out to you that TJ kind of stuck with Mutt and Callahan, I thought he was going to go, I've got that disgusting spit in the corner of my mouth. I am hideous. I thought he was going to go nuclear on TJ Hubbard because that's kind of what I expected from him in the past. And he didn't. I'm glad he didn't because it probably would have been entertaining, but perhaps unfair. And I think Kirk's explanation of it made total sense to me. But in the past, I thought he would have flipped out on him. So maybe it's because that those aggravations aren't there, that fewer blow-ups or, softening from Kirk are symptomatic of the fact that things are going really well for him. So not meant as a bad thing, not meant as a criticism. I'm terrified of criticizing Kirk now, okay? Why am I terrified of criticizing Kirk? Why don't I want to criticize Kirk? Nickels worth of free advice. Check out this book, Influence by Robert Cialdini, okay? There's the author's name for you. It's not stuffy. It's written in a really accessible, easy to read, and interesting way. And as the title tells you, it's all about influence. So one thing in there that he writes about is called the reciprocity principle. And the reciprocity principle is simple but powerful. And it is this part of us that got wired into us neurologically as cavemen that when somebody does something nice for you, you feel compelled to do something nice back for them. And you see this all the time in marketing. For example, you ever get those return address labels that you didn't ask for, but the company just sends them to you inexplicably for free with no strings attached? That's the reciprocity principle, because it's proven that even a small gesture like that is worth the company's investment because it's playing on that part of your brain that then feels compelled to do something for that company. Now, maybe you don't always follow through on it, but by sending you those return address labels, they are making it more likely that you're going to do something nice back for them by patronizing them or sending a donation or what have you. So how that relates to the KMS world is a guy like me, I feel fortunate, and I feel like it was a very cool thing Kirk did talking to me on YouTube. I feel fortunate, and I feel like it was a very cool thing Steve did inviting me to contribute to Cullen. Those are them doing things for me, and the reciprocity principle then makes me feel like I owe them something. So then if I'm going to offer a take that I think is going to piss them off, or if I want to be critical of them, I'm going to be hesitant because I feel like I owe them something, and that by being critical of them or pissing them off, I'm not giving them what they're owed because of what they gave to me, okay? In a broader sense for the KMS audience, Kirk actually highlighted this today. He said, you keep the price of Madawaska at the original $75 value, even if it, should be more in future years. Why does Kirk want to keep it there? Because as he said, you do fans that favor, that nice gesture, it makes them more likely to then spend money elsewhere. That's the reciprocity principle. Kirk doing something nice for his audience, the audience feeling like they owe him something, the audience then patronizing a sponsor, buying a live ticket show, buying a t-shirt, all that stuff. That's all the reciprocity principle. Do something for someone, they'll feel like they got to do something for you. You see it everywhere. You see it in the KMS world. Go get this book. It's good. I promise you, okay? That's your nickel's worth.
But you can't have children looking at Eddie Mayo up there. And that.
We're not.